on the doorstep know that one of the things I like the most is getting a voter's life story out of them and finding out how the Labour Party can be relevant in their lives. And I always love hearing how people use this movement that we have to further our combined ambitions and our objectives, and it's fascinating to hear that. So thank you all for sharing so honestly your experiences and your journey there. You could live another 100 years and never see an election as important as this one. We are at a fork in the road. We're going to go one way or we're going to go the other way. I'm going to paint two pictures for you. On Friday the 13th of December, we could wake up, we could turn on the television, and Boris Johnson will be standing on the steps of number 10 Downing Street with his dirty grin, and this country will not be the same again. We will not be able to recover the damage that another 5 years of a Tory government will cause. The people who will be smiling with him will be the millionaires, the corporate tax dodgers, the energy companies who rip the resources from the ground and then rip off the customers so they can pay sky-high dividends and fat cat salaries. The country will become more like the worst side of Donald Trump's America, where only those who have capital can benefit from the disruption. Only those who own property will be able to benefit. And those without will lose out more and more and more. The casual racism that we heard Lester talk about will become the norm. Transphobia, homophobia will become the norm. That is not something we can face for 5 years. So let me paint you another picture. Not just for next month, but for the following 5 years. If Jeremy Corbyn becomes Prime Minister, we will have a Labour government unlike any in my lifetime. Our hospital staff, including people like Sarah's dad, will have the resources that they need to care for people. There won't be people languishing on waiting lists and being blocked from going home or having accidents at home because we haven't got the resources that we need. The schools in Watford will be properly funded. From infanthood, where inequality matters so much, children will be supported through the schemes that we've already mentioned, and class sizes will go down, and children will have the opportunities that they deserve. Our transport system, and I mean this within a 5-year period, I believe could be safe, efficient and affordable. And here in Watford, I think we will be able to celebrate within 5 years from now the closing of the last food bank, because we will no longer need them. I think we can do this with the Jeremy Corbyn government. This isn't a pipe dream. And the lingering poverty that people have, in-work poverty, out-of-work poverty, people won't have that spectre of fear hanging over their heads. Fear of losing your job, fear of universal credit, fear of not being able to afford your prescriptions. In a 5-year term, we can fix these things. And I also believe that many people in this town will be able to have a home that they can afford their own. And do you know what? We're on the right side of history. Because the current economic model that has run since 1979 or 1989, depending on how you measure it, sometimes called neoliberalism, has had its time. And it's left behind people who don't have the capital and the resources that they need to thrive and to make more money. And a Labour Party will borrow sensibly and tax sensibly, but more importantly, it will transform how the economy works. And we will be able to deliver a better society and a fairer society. We will be able to use the trade union movement and to work with them to ban 0 hours contracts so that workers have more security. And we will change our policy on drugs and on mental health so that we put people first. And the Green New Deal will put the planet before profit. And that's something that we need to get excited about, because if we don't do that, then we are facing 5 more years of environmental degradation. An ethical foreign policy will give people all around the world who face oppression and who face injustice hope that a Labour government will be on their side, because injustice in every corner of the world affects us in the Labour Party. We'll have a policy with our European neighbours where we will be on open and friendly terms with them. I hope as a member of the European Union, but certainly with socialist leaders and socialist policies in greater number across Europe. So we've got the opportunity here to do something that really is quite remarkable. I want my children to ask me 5 years from now, what was Brexit all about? I want them to ask, why did we ever need food banks? Why did we ever see homeless people in Watford? Because we can do that with a Labour government and with a Jeremy Corbyn-led government. And I want to see a town here, Watford, where everyone thrives, regardless of race, creed or colour. Not just that they have equal access to everything that's available to everyone, but also that people feel empowered, and people feel like this town is for them, wherever they're from, whichever immigrant community they're from, whichever part of the UK or the world they're from. So what are we going to do? We have an opportunity here in Watford, a once in a lifetime opportunity, a once in 100-year opportunity to write our own future. I'm going to talk a bit about Christmas, because Christmas is going to be upon us in a minute. Now, I love Christmas. I even love it when there's an election, because I love elections as well. But one of the things I most love about Christmas is Charles Dickens' story of the Christmas Carol. Now, if Charles Dickens was alive today, I'm convinced he'd be here in this room with us, because those of us who, I love his books, and he writes about the injustices and the hypocrisy of the powers that be in his time. He comes across as someone who is a kindred spirit to all of us here in this room. And I'm going to tell you about one of my favourite stories of Christmas, which is the Christmas Carol. And if you remember when Scrooge sees the ghost of Christmas past, and he sees the ghost of Christmas present, and then he sees the ghost of things yet to come, the ghost of Christmas future. And he looks on in horror as he sees that the things that he has done has caused such misery and harm and hardship to the people around him and to Tiny Tim and the people in his community. And then he turns to the Spirit and he asks the most important question in the whole story, in my view. He asks the Spirit, are these things that will happen, or can they change? And the Spirit says, all of this can change if you find it in your heart. And this is what we have now. We have the opportunity to write our own future. Every board that you erect in a garden in the rain, every leaflet that you deliver, every video that you share, every person you tell about voting Labour, every time you go door knocking with us, you are writing our future together. And this is something that we're privileged to be able to do. You see, we're so lucky because, as Lester said, in this seat in Watford, the moment I get elected as the MP for Watford, Jeremy Corbyn will lead the largest party, and we will have a Labour government or a Labour-led government. So we have the opportunity to write our own future together. And we have the opportunity to make sure that every single person who comes and asks us about this election, we can say in the future that we did this together, and that we did this because we wanted to make sure that the future took the road that's attuned with our values. So let's do everything we can to elect me as the MP, to elect Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister, and to have a Labour government for the many and not the few. Thank you very much.
Later on, I have some questions for Chris. Before I introduce our guest speaker tonight, Barry, I just want to say a few words myself, because not only am I chair, but I'm also Chris's election agent. And I just want to tell you a little bit about what's going on. We were talking in the office the other day about the campaigning in the cold, dark weather of November. And in fact, the first general election I campaigned in, shows you how old I am, was February 1974. 13 general elections. And in February 1974, it was in the middle of the miners' strike. And we had a 3-day week. I worked at Rolls-Royce at Leeson at the time, and the factory was only open three days a week because of what the Tories were doing then. And Ted Heath, who was the Tory Prime Minister in those days, decided to call the general election. He thought he could get a majority, and his campaign was, who runs the country? And the electorate said, not you, mate, because they elected a Labour government instead. And I think there are parallels for today in a winter election and the dark nights as well, as what we want the electorate to say to Boris Johnson, not you, mate. We want a Labour government, and that's the opportunity that we have. So this opportunity to go out in the dark, cold nights, as we've been doing, you know, there's no such thing as it being too cold, just not enough clothes. So you can come out with us and campaign, and we're already having a great time. We've got plenty of torches, etc. Or we're knocking on doors. We've already met nearly 3,000 people in the first 10 days of the campaign. Absolutely fantastic. Congratulations to the regional director that we are the third highest in the whole of the east of England in terms of contact with Labour voters, and it's personal contact is the best way to ensure that undecided voters, Lib Dems, actually vote Labour in Watford. Because you see these signs here, the Lib Dems can't win here, it's only Labour that can win and beat the Tories in Watford. So out on the doorstep, if you haven't done it before, please come along and join us. We'll send you somebody experienced, and believe me, you'll soon do it yourself. We've had 5 or 6 new people already in this campaign have come out with us, and before the end of the session, they're knocking on doors and having conversations themselves. So, but no pressure. You decide when you want to do it. We've also got some fantastic leaflets being presented. You'll see the one that's back from the printers today. That's going to be delivered to every single household in Watford. There are 2 other leaflets which are going to print, which will be addressed to every house with the Royal Mail. We've got tons of leaflets ourselves to deliver to us, and we're delighted to have you working with us. And our campaign is so much more efficient, we can get so much done. And of course, we're unlike the other parties. We've actually got an accessible office. You can come and do work in. We had 13 people in this week. Jenny didn't read stuffing envelopes. All those 8,000 envelopes were stuffed by volunteers. They had a hoot of a time. So there's always something for everybody to do, whether or you know, able or disabled, whatever. They can come and do that. So please come and join us. The final thing I want to say is the awkward thing about money. Now, the reality is that we don't have any millionaire backers anymore. We have to rely on our trade unions and members. Frankly, the number of trade unions we have in Watford nowadays is much diminished compared to what it used to be. And in reality, 95% of the money that we get this campaign, we have to raise ourselves. And so we're saying to members who can afford it, please donate £100. Now, not everybody can afford £100, and the whole principle of everybody according to their means is a very important principle. So if you can only afford £20, we'll welcome that as well. But please don't leave this room without making some sort of pledge of a donation, unless you have already made a donation, of course, which many people have. So at the bottom of this form, which is on your chair, you'll see a pledge form. I'm going to ask you to write on that pledge form an amount of money which you can pledge to us. And then we'll leave it a week for you to make that donation either through various means that are on the leaflet, through our website, through by cheque or whatever. And then if you haven't been able, we'll go on the telephone and chase you up for it. But please, but seriously, you know, money enables us to do things that other parties do, right? So the more money they have, the more that we can do. So it's really important. So if you can make a donation or pledge a donation tonight, then please do so and hand it to somebody, lay it on the chair, or hand it to somebody from the front at the end of the meeting. So that's all from me. And now on to the start of the show, Barry Gardner. Now, Barry,
what have you done? What do you think you're doing? You've taken our future away, and we have to reclaim it. And that's why when we talk about transformation, when we talk about the way in which our manifesto is going to change this country, we're not just talking about the health service. We're not just talking about scrapping universal credit. We're not just talking about a housing programme that is going to deliver 200,000 houses a year, affordable homes a year for the next 5 years, 1 million new homes. What we're talking about is actually ensuring that within the next 20 years, we still have coral reefs, we still have polar bears, we still have an environment that we can live in. And, you know, people talk about climate change and they talk about it as if it was all disaster. You know, we're going to lose all these species, there's going to be hurricanes and typhoons, and there's going to be flooding. My goodness, we've seen the flooding. We've seen what climate change is doing now. But what we're saying is no. We have a hopeful message that is going to transform this country, because our green industrial revolution is going to see a 7-fold increase in offshore wind in this country. Do you know what that means in terms of jobs? We're talking about 400,000 new jobs in this country, skilled jobs, highly paid jobs. And what we've got to see is a just transition for people from the old fossil fuel industries to the new industries that we're going to create. And that's why the Labour Party's Green Industrial Revolution is one of the most important elements of the transformation that we're going to see. And when John McDonnell talks about £250 billion of new infrastructure in this country, that's jobs. That's real power to communities. That's real economic growth. And it's not all gloom and doom. We can transform our society in a way that creates wealth, in a way that takes people with us, and in a way that ultimately is going to mean that our children have a future and we haven't stolen it from them. But we have to be serious. We have now 5 weeks. 5 weeks to get Chris elected, 5 weeks to get a Labour government. If we don't do it, just think what a Merry Christmas you'll have. If we do it, think of what the future can bring. We are looking forward to the most radical transformation of our country. We're looking forward to a country that is based on all the reasons that you ever decided to get involved in the Labour movement in the first place. Why? Because you believe in fairness, because you believe in equality, because you believe in justice. That's what the Labour movement's all about. That is what a Labour government will bring. Thank you.
So we're coming now just to the end of our meeting, just to remind you about one or two things. But just first of all to say that Chris said, I think, in his speech that we had a great opportunity to make our history here in Watford, and he's absolutely right. But I think there's two other things as well about Watford. The fact that we are the 35th target seat for Labour in the country, and that if we win Watford, we get rid of Boris Johnson and the Tories, is both a privilege and a responsibility as well on us, right? It is our responsibility to win Watford, because by winning Watford, we win the country and we win a Labour government. So we all have that personal responsibility to do our bit to win this seat. I outlined earlier on all the ways you can do it. And again, another plea. Please make a donation tonight to enable us to do it as well, because we've got the money to do it. We will spend it very wisely on Chris's campaign. So finally, I want to thank all of you for coming along tonight. It's been a great meeting. I hope you really enjoyed it. It's not quite over yet because we've got to do the photographs. Well, the question and answer. I've been reminded quite correctly that you might want to ask some questions. And we actually do have some time for questions. Good.